So today we give continuation to the very last chapter of this book. Chapter, 28, Collection of the Spiritist Prayers. Today we will give continuation at item 15, to keep evil spirits away. But just to recap, I think it's always good to remind ourselves that a last chapter in general is a conclusion of all that's been presented previously throughout the book, and this is no exception. In this chapter, we have a synthesis of the whole teachings of Jesus, of its moral laws, of moral contents presented in this book. We pray what we believe. In this collection of suggestive prayers, I think it's always wise to remind that these are suggestions. These are not formulas. These are not things that we have to memorize. On the contrary, if you just put our time into memorizing this, perhaps you'll lose the opportunity of feel and really express those words. For most of us, we have certain difficulty in putting sentences together and speaking. Kardec used us here some suggestions, things that we may use as a guideline when we pray. And not only pray, but pray with an objective. So you see the prayer for this, prayer for that, prayer for to do this, prayer to avoid that. That in our prayer should be, as for everything in life, for anyone who is somewhat organized and intellectually improving intellectually, things are done with an objective, not just pray for praying, but should have an objective when you pray. And he has several objectives Kardec suggests to us in prayer. One addition that I would say that when we do, I don't know, our before sleeping prayer, when waking up prayer, and pray in the subway, that we don't have to limit to one objective. Now, the prayer could be extended, pray for several things at the same time. You don't have to limit ourselves to say, now I'm going to pray only for every spirit, to keep spirits away. Not necessarily. And you'll see in this item from item 15 to 20, there is several things over here that it can everything be compiled in one single prayer. Okay, but again, the most important I like to stress is we are praying here the things that we believe, things that, and you don't believe only with a blind faith, but with reason. Everything should should be reasonable to us. And again, it's suggestions. Okay, nothing that needs to be memorized. If one chooses to memorize, go right ahead, but that's not the objective of Kardec in this chapter. Okay, so item 15, to keep evil spirits away. Philip, will you do the honor for us?
Certainly.
Thank you.
Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you clean the outside of the cup and plate, while inside they are full of plunder and impurity. Blind Pharisees, first clean the inside of the cup and plate, so that the outside may be clean also. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you are like whitewashed tombs, which look beautiful on the outside, but which inside are full of every sort of corruption. Thus, on the outside, you seem righteous in men's eyes, but inside, you are full of hypocrisy and inequity. Matthew 23, 25 to 28.
It's quite interesting that Kardec puts this warning, so to say, to the Pharisees and the scribes, right? The scribes are the one who were able to read and write, which of course at that time not many were able to do so, and the Pharisees are a group of religious who very often was in charge of the prayers, in charge of maintenance of the temples. And Kardec starts a part of prayers to keep evil spirits away with this warning, basically from Jesus Christ, right? That he uses the scribes and the Pharisees, but in reality represents all of us. And I think especially Spiritists. My understanding here is that Kardec is letting us know right from the beginning, the good spirits are coming to help you. The good spirits will do all they can to keep the evil spirits away, as the title of the chapter is. But you must do your part. There is a few things that we cannot do for you. There's a few things that the good spirits, that Jesus, that not even God can do to you. That is to do your own homework, do your own cleaning of your inner self. The appearances of being oh generous, oh good, oh morally correct from the outside must match the inside to avoid being a hypocrite. That what will attract evil spirits to us is what we have inside and not what we have outside. And if you see in this chapter, it has very little to do with evil spirits per se. So the title is to keep evil spirits away, but it has almost nothing to do with the evil spirits, it has to do with ourselves. That if we follow the recommendations, the guidelines that Jesus brought to us, it's pretty much a guarantee that we will keep evil spirits away, even if you don't pray for it. But with the understanding that we live in a world of trials and expiations, and where still evil predominates of good, we are surrounded by spirits that we may classify as evil. And thinking of what does it mean to be evil, right? And Kardec over here places evil everything that it is contrary to the principles of charity. Any spirit whose actions and objectives are contrary to the principles of charity may be considered an evil spirit. So we're not talking about the extremely bad rebellious, anyone whose thoughts, whose intentions are toward selfishness, are toward vices, are toward violence, or any kind of things, we will consider an evil spirit. And another device that fits inside of this passage of Matthew is make sure, first of all, that you yourself is not an evil spirit. Before we start talking about those out there that you want to avoid, make sure that you are not the one that people should avoid. For you yourself, the way you act, what you carry in your heart and mind, places you in what could be named an evil spirit, because your thoughts, your desires are contrary to the principles of charity. And one of the things that I would remind you here, though it says evil spirits then reflect immediately on the discarnate one, it's equally valid for incarnate ones, right? So when we say keep evil spirits away, we're talking about incarnate and discarnate alike. Okay? And anyone can stop for comments, ask questions at any time. And most of the chapters very self-explanatory. It's even hard, at least I find, to have a lot of things to comment. Okay, Philip?
Number 16,
Sure.
Introduction. Evil spirits go only where they find what satisfies their wickedness. In order to keep them at bay, it is not enough to ask them or even to order them to stay away. One must rid oneself of what attracts them. Evil spirits sniff out the wounds of the soul, just as flies sniff out the wounds of the body. Just as you would cleanse your body to keep vermin away, cleanse your soul of its impurities to keep evil spirits away. Since we live in a world swarming with evil spirits, the good qualities of the heart do not always shelter us from their attempts, but they do give us the strength to resist them.
Very simple. If you wanted to buy meat, you don't go to the bakery. And if you want to buy bread, you don't go to the meat market. We go where we find what we will find what we are looking for. So if there is any spirit who is seeking to acquire anything that is contrary to the laws of charity, of love, of fraternity, it is not going to look for individuals who are in that path of carrying the principles of charity in their hearts. We look where they find affinity of thoughts, affinity of sentiments. So therefore, again, it's something of that we have to practice for ourselves, then we'll be able to keep those evil spirits away. And very important, since we live in a world swarming with evil spirits, the good qualities of their heart do not always shelter us from their attempts, but they give us the strength to resist them. If you go to, I don't know, to the Everglades, it is impossible that you're not gonna see mosquitoes. It's where they live. That's, and the female mosquito is gonna try to suck your blood. That's what they do. If you are in that environment, there will be mosquitoes that will try to get a meal out of from you. It's just impossible not to, because that's where they live. That's the environment. But if you protect yourself with the proper repellents, you will not get bitten by mosquitoes. But they are there. They live there. And again, as I said in the beginning, this is the world that we live in. A world of trials and expiations, a world with, what would say today now, perhaps 8 times 3, so 24 billion spirits among incarnate and discarnate. There is amongst those a good number that we could be classified as evil spirits, and yet we are surrounded by them. So it is impossible to not have some kind of contact with them because there are so many amongst us. But if you have the right repellent, they will not affect us. If we have goodness in our heart, if we have the principles of charity within us, there will be the repellent that will distract them from us. Okay? Comments? Questions? 17 then?
Prayer in the name of Almighty God. May evil spirits stay away from me, and may good spirits serve as my rampart against them. Wicked spirits who inspire people with evil thoughts, deceitful and lying spirits who delude them, mocking spirits who entertain yourselves with their gullibility, I repel you with all the strength of my soul, and I shut my ears to your suggestions. However, I ask God's mercy upon you. Good spirits who have agreed to assist me, give me the strength to resist the influence of evil spirits and the necessary understanding not to be a victim of their ruses. Keep me from pride and presumption. Keep from my heart jealousy, hatred, malevolence, and all sentiments against charity, which are all open doors to evil spirits.
So here, Kardec gives us in this prayer what he pretty much is calling of evil spirits would be in the second paragraph, and they say, wicked spirits who inspire people with evil thoughts, deceitful and lying spirits who delude them, mocking spirits who entertain yourselves with their gullibility. I repel you with all the strength of my soul, and I shut my ear to your suggestions. But that important it says, I ask God's mercy upon you. And there's a reminder that these are suffering spirits. When you pray to suffering spirits, when we think of those who are ill, these are perhaps the ones who need most prayer. Those who are truly ill of the our spiritual essence, the generator of thoughts, being the sentiments of still very inferior materialized sentiments that are contrary to the principles of charity. Those are perhaps the most need of all of us, if not ourselves. And they deserve our mercy. And we ask God to have mercy upon them, and the mercy of God upon them, as we understand, is to receive the opportunity of learning, of evolving themselves. And because we ourselves are weak, we ourselves have our evil tendencies ourselves, we need to consistently be asking for assistance. You have the good spirits, as Kardec puts here, who agreed to assist us, our protecting spirits, our guardian angels, our spiritual guides, loved ones in the spiritual world, to help us to have the strength to resist the influence of evil spirits. Again, they are everywhere, they are here. And the likelihood that they may find something within us that attract them to us is very plausible. We cannot put ourselves on a pedestal that I don't carry within myself anything that will not attract them. It's probably not true. Probably we have something within us Otherwise, you're unlikely to be reincarnated in this kind of world. But pray to be able to resist their influence. I think it's something that we all should be doing consistently. And again, help me to do my part first. I know that you're there to help me, but I know that you can only go so far. So I also ask you to help me to do what only I can do to keep from my heart jealousy, hatred, malevolence, and all sentiments against charity, which are all open door to evil spirits. It's very likely that most of us will have, from time to time, in our hearts, those ill vices, those ill sentiments of jealousy, of hatred, of malevolence, that you will not only have within ourselves, but you will act on it. And I believe that we need to pray to keep those things at a minimum. And when those thoughts come, when our sentiment generate those thoughts, that we will not act on it. And very often, without the help, the assistance of the good spirits, it will be very hard for us to not act on it. So I think it's perhaps the most important part of the prayer is help me to resist, to act on the still very inferior tendencies that I have within myself. The tendencies that attract the spirits who would try to influence me to act on those ill sentiments, on those unproductive thoughts. Help me to resist, to act on those thoughts. And there will be plenty of spirits over there that will try to stimulate us to act. And we do need consistently assistance to not act on those thoughts, to not surrender to the influence of those who do not want what's best for us.
Right. It's interesting, right? Because when you read this, it's 100% on us, right? And that's something that makes spiritism so hard for some people, right? Because we would love to have external sources fixing our problems, right? So we pray for the superior spirits, and they go there and fix our problems without us making any effort. But here, what the prayer says is that I have to do everything. I have to do my work. I have to pray. I have to work on my inner self. I have to clean myself on the inside. It's me. Everything is my work. So it's easy to understand that people that they go to other places to even to pay or to ask for the external sources to fix their problems, right? That's what we all would love to do at our level of evolution. And when we are asked to do the work by ourselves, it becomes a challenge, right? It becomes hard.
And to accept with humility that we are far from not have anything that attract the so-called evil spirits towards us. That requires a degree of humility. And the degree of humility to say that chances are that by myself, I will surrender to them. By myself, I'm weak. I do not still have that moral strength, that moral power to not surrender myself to their influences. And I need help with that. And have that certainty that help is there to help us. Of course, we'd have to do our contribution, but help is there for. We have to have that certainty with reason. And of course, the humility to ask for it. Because again, when in the passages of Jesus, most of the time when individuals approached him, and for one thing, as much as I can remember throughout his gospel, I don't really recall that Jesus went for someone, hey, you need help, can I help you? People came to Jesus, which symbolizes that when you're ready to come to me, I'm here for you, right? And when they do come, Jesus would ask, what do you want? What do you want from me? Que queres que eu faça? What do you want me to do? Right? For you. And that exemplifies to us that our need to go to Jesus, to go to the good spirits, and have an objective when you go. As I said in the beginning, everything is an objective. Oh, I just want to say hello to you, Jesus. Okay, hello, bye. I know people want more, right? And have an objective when you go to Jesus. And that requires that reasonable faith and humility, like the publican who have to go up a tree because they're so damn short. The only way to see Jesus, of course, is a symbolism in there. You need to go up the sigmoid tree. You have to have that faith and that humility. But yeah, John, it starts with us. It has to start with us to take the step to ask for and to make the commitment to do all that we can to keep those good spirits around us, to help to assist us most of the time. Otherwise, we would, in our ignorance, we would become easy prey to those evil spirits. Some of them are extremely smart and will find ways to convince and influence us to be their little puppets. All right. Number 18.
To ask for a fault to be corrected. Introduction. Our evil instincts are the result of the imperfection of our spirit and not of our body. Otherwise, humankind would be exempt from any kind of responsibility. Our advancement depends on us because all people who enjoy the use of their faculties in all things have the freedom to do or not to do. They lack only the will to do the good.
I think I continue.
19.
Yes.
Prayer. You have given me, O God, the intelligence I need to distinguish between good and evil. Thus, the instant in which I realize that something is evil, I am guilty if I do not make an effort to resist it. Keep me from the pride that may prevent me from perceiving my faults, and from the evil spirits who may incite me to persevere in them. Amongst my imperfections, I realize that I am particularly inclined toward, and if I do not resist this inclination, it is because of my habit to give in to it. You did not create me blameworthy, for you are just, but you created me with an equal aptitude for either good or evil. If I have followed the evil pathway, it is a result of my free will. But for the same reason that I have the freedom to do evil, I can also do good. Consequently, I can change my course. My current faults are remains of the imperfections I have retained from my previous existences. That is my original sin, from which I may unburden myself with my will and the assistance of good spirits. Good spirits who watch over me, and especially you, my guardian angel, give me strength to resist evil suggestions and emerge victorious from the struggle. Faults are barriers that separate us from God, and each one that is overcome is a step toward taken on the path of progress that shall bring me closer to Him. The Lord, in His infinite mercy, has willed to grant me this present existence to serve for my advancement. Good spirits, help me to take advantage of I so that I may not waste it, and that when it pleases God to take me from it, it may leave more evolved. I may leave more evolved than when I entered.
Okay, I think help me to take advantage of it, so I may
Yeah.
not waste. It's missing
Yeah.
a T.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I think this item in 18 and 19 is a reflection of the part of the Spirit's book, the Know Thyself, the suggestion of St. Augustine of doing that daily recap of your daily activities before you go to bed and say, where did I go right? Where did I go wrong? And recognize that chances are at some point during the day, you went wrong. You went on the path that it's not the one that Jesus illuminates for us. It's an exercise of getting to know ourselves. It's an exercise to understand our fragility, of understand our weakness, of understanding the triggers that leads me to deviate from that path, that give us the compass on how to redirect ourselves to stay in that path that Jesus illuminates for us. It gives us the reminding that you have the free will, that the path is there for that all of us who are here right now are committed to do our best to walk into that path, as hard as it is. And we know that in order to be consistent inside of that path, we're going to need help. We're going to need help to help us to deal with the influences. We're going to do it for help to not surrender to the influences of those who would like to see us to deviate from that path. Not necessarily because they hate us and don't want us to do good, but very often because they, in order to take advantage of us, we need to be outside of that. Then in the case that they don't have anything particular against us, they're going to use us as instruments to reach their objectives. And being the case, if we do not give them that opportunity, if you do not surrender to the influences, they're not going to persist very hard. They're going to go find what they want somewhere else. Again, you're not going to go to buy bread on the meat market. You go where there is bread. But the Spiritus will see in us the targets, the the triggers that they can use to influence us to redirect. And if you follow the suggestions of St. Augustine and go through that humble and honest recap of our actions or even thoughts throughout the day, well, you find out, oh, I dropped the ball here, I dropped the ball there, and you think what led me to take this or that action that now recognized was not the best option. And by doing that, we recognize our weakness, which is the point of ignition to initiate a correction. In order to correct something, you have to recognize the mistake. And in this prayer, Kardec wants to remind us that it's always an option, regardless of the circumstances, regardless of how hard it may be to resist, it's always an option. It's always an exercise of the free will in association with our intelligence and redirecting our thoughts towards our conscience, where those divine laws resides. That if we surrender to inferior influences, it was a choice. And that's the part when John says being Spiritist sometimes is hard, because you have to accept the fact that even if everything moves you toward evil, it is still your decision to go into that direction. We can think of many situations in our private life in which we can always justify our actions, right? And say, oh, I did that was not good, but I had no choice. But these and that circumstances led me to it. The truth is, it was a choice that we made. The truth is that we could resist. As hard it may sound, as harsh it may sound, we could have and should have resisted. So to ask for a fault to be corrected, in reality here is to ask to have the willpower to not surrender to all those circumstances, to all those influences, to all of the modism, everything that seems to lead us towards evil, that we can resist as hard it may be. To have the humility of make the necessary correction upon recognize them. But first I have to recognize them, of course. Okay. And there is not an action that you have taken that you say they were obliged. It's always an option. It sounds crazy, but it is. If somebody put a gun in your head to say, do this or I shoot you, you have a choice. I'll do this because I want to live another day, or I will not do this. I'd rather go back to the spiritual world and not do this. It is an option. No, I'm not talking about what this is, right? But indeed, it is an option. You say, I didn't have an option, like I got a gun in my head. Yeah, you had an option. You could take that bullet and go to the spiritual world. Now, is this right or wrong? I'm not talking about here, but I'm saying it is an option, always an option. And I think the prayer here is to be guided towards to make the best options always. And when we don't make the best option, which will happen likely several times during our day, to have the humility, the recognition to make the reparation. And that's why they say, what ought to be corrected. Okay, Ebony, at your hands.
Yes. As I read these prayers, I get the feeling that we are encouraged mostly to focus on our moral improvement, asking to resist the temptation that these evil spirits may provide for us, as opposed to just praying to keep them away for keeping away sake. Because considering that we are still imperfect, and it is only until we reach the level of perfection we are actually not going to be under the influence or being able to attract evil spirits. I think, again, I think the focus for us is, and not just my thought, is more to improve ourselves so that the evil spirits whom we attract by our own efforts to better ourselves, to cleanse our souls, they are also influenced and inspired by our behavior, our actions at self-regeneration, etc., and would also be, encouraged to improve themselves. I don't think we are being asked to pray to keep them away just to send them away, really, but just so that, as we work on improving ourselves, they too can also be influenced to improve themselves.
I totally agree. The education part that you mentioned here that we can provide to surrounding spirits among us, I think it's been more of a natural consequence than actually an intention of ours, right? I mean, my intention is not really to be a teacher over here, but I understand that in this process, if I do my part, I may serve as an example to others. But it's a natural consequence, and I think it's hard for us to think. I think we are in so much trouble, in so much need of taking care of ourselves. You are still putting the mask on our own face before you put the mask on all of the one in the airplane, right? When they suggest every time that there is a problem or oxygen, you put a mask on your face first and then on your loved one. We are in this somewhat selfish stage that we need to work on ourselves, to ask for ourselves, knowing that when you make the good decisions or decisions, it may serve as an example and may lead others to follow as a natural consequence of things. But above all things, in this specific prayer, is an exercise of humility to understand that along the day I will commit fault. It's almost certain, it's almost a given for the level where I find myself as a spirit incarnate in this kind of world. Otherwise, I would not be incarnate in this kind of world, right? And I ask to be able to make the corrections. And make the corrections, what the Kardec stresses here is make better use of your free will. Make sure that your free will, your decisions is aligned with intelligence and with the moral laws that is imprinted in our conscience. But along the day, we are going to deviate from all of that. And when we do so, we ask for the opportunity to make the necessary corrections. But yeah, it's really about us, as Ron said at the beginning, that the title is to keep evil spirits away, but it's not really about evil spirits, it's really about us. It's really about purifying ourselves to free ourselves from evil sentiments that generate evil thoughts, that generates evil words and evil actions, and create an attractive for other spirits to associate with us in affinity with what we brew in our own heart. All right, any more comments and more questions? We keep going.
To ask for strength to resist a temptation. Number 20, introduction. Every bad thought could have two sources: the soul's own imperfection or a sinister influence that acts upon it. In the latter case, it is always the indication of a weakness that makes us predisposed to receive such influence, and is thus an indication of an imperfect soul. Consequently, those who have failed cannot use the excuse of having been influenced by an outside spirit, for such a spirit could not have induced anyone to evil if it had judged the person inaccessible to temptation. When an evil thought arises, we can thus assume that a malevolent spirit is inducing us to evil, to which we are as completely free to yield or resist as if we were being tempted by a living person. At the same time, we should imagine our guardian angel or protector spirit, who, on its part, combats the evil influence in us and anxiously awaits our decision. Our hesitation to do evil is the voice of a good spirit making itself heard in our conscience. A thought is acknowledged to be evil when it detours us from charity, which is the basis of all moral truth. When the thought's source is pride, vanity, or selfishness, when acting on it may cause any harm to another person, and lastly, when it entices us to do unto others what we would not like them to do unto us. See chapter 28, number 15, and chapter 15, number 10.
Okay, prayer.
Almighty God, and not let me yield to the temptation that may lead me into error. Benevolent spirits watching over me, take this bad thought from me and give me the strength to resist the suggestion of evil. If I do yield, I deserve the expiation of my wrong in this life or another, for I am free to make a choice.
So we say that sentiments emanates from our essence, the spirit, right? And this sentiment will travel and will produce thought, energy. And these energies propel us to act, right? So we could say that our actions or lack of it derives from our essence, the spirit, that produces the sentiments, that generates the thoughts, and the thoughts generates actions, right? So all those thoughts, we have two sources. I generated from my own sentiment, or it came from a third party. But if it came from a third party, it's because that third party has some kind of affinity with me, has something within me that creates the possibility of me receiving those thoughts from this third party. And I said in the beginning that the spirits are smart enough to find that target. I don't know if it's purely smartness, intellectual ability, or is something that happens almost naturally. That affinity, almost like, oxygen having attraction to hydrogen and create molecule of water. I don't know if I'm not so convinced that it's pure intelligence, or if there is that natural attraction of minds that think alike or hearts that produce alike sentiments. But regardless, if we receive thought, and we do receive thoughts from a third party, it is still our decision to transform those into actions. Right? You receive the thought that, oh, you should say this to that person right now. It is your choice to say or to silence yourself. And this plays exactly about have the strength to resist the temptation to say or do things that perhaps would generate something negative to someone else, and definitely would generate something negative to yourself. If I say something harmful, offensive, derogatory to someone else, that someone else may be more elevated than I am, and don't take it. You can curse me, you can call me whatever you want to be. I am above all this inferior actions and thoughts, and you're not gonna affect me. But guaranteed 100% that it will affect myself. Right? That's the old saying, when you point one finger at someone else, you have three pointed at yourself, right? It reflects what I am. It reflects my inferiority. And that person, the one that I intended to receive, may not be affected by it. Keep him or herself above my low level. But I definitely am harming myself in this process. And again, if we incarnate in this kind of world today, it is because we do produce our own number of ill sentiments that generates ill thoughts. And by having those vices, we will attract those who have the same qualities that we have. We go back to XXVIII, and says that we are like a lake, right? I said that before, and I think it's a very good analogy. The water on the top is calm, crystalline, and totally clean. On the very bottom of that lake, there's a good amount of mud, of decaying material, old leaves. So there's a lot of mess at the bottom of that lake. We should try to live our life as not create too much revolution in that water, to not mess up at the bottom of that lake. So the water remains clean. But if you allow things to come in and mess up at the bottom of the lake, will you move all that mud or the bad stuff from the bottom of the lake, and the water that was crystalline becomes muddy, becomes dirty? We can see that hard wind that moves the water from the bottom, moves the bottom of the lake and mess up with the water, being influences of the spirits. To keep ourselves, not allow those influences to do that, to move what to have the worst, the mud being decaying in the bottom of us, leave them there. And by not acting on them, they will eventually disappear, they'll be consumed, they'll be destroyed. It's a natural law. If you don't use it, you lose it. So I think this prayer is about asking for to have the strength to not allow outside energies to mess up the waters of my lake, to keep it clean. I know there is a lot of things at the bottom there that needs to be worked on. Let they stay there. They'll be destroyed by not being used. This prayer is all about recognizing that we have all that mud in the bottom of our hearts. And we want to keep them quiet over there, not mess them up, don't bring them up to the surface. And eventually, we will transform them into purity. Every time that you allow that to happen, that allow that you lose the resistance, and you surrender to their temptations, you mess up, and it takes a long time for all that debris or the sediments to get down to the bottom and clean up that water again. And that's the period of suffering that we go through, to allow those things to come down again and purify that water again, so to say. We know that it's very unlikely that we'll be able to do that by ourselves. And again, if you don't need help to not resist temptations, chances are you not reincarnate in this planet anymore. You have already moved to another level. Recognizing that by ourselves it will be very difficult to resist all their temptations. Leads us to have this kind of prayer. Help me to resist, to act in my inferior tendency. Help me to resist the temptations, external and internal temptation that we have there. Help me to resist the influences that lead me to go outside of the path that Jesus illuminates for us. And it completes over here with I think is very important. If I do, meaning if I do surrender to the inferior temptations and influences, I will deserve the expiation of my wrong in this life or another, for I am free to make a choice. No, this thing, the free to make a choice, is a hard one, but indeed, we are free to make a choice. It may be a very difficult one. It may be the one that we imagine to be very close of impossible, but it's possible to make that choice. And chances are we will surrender ourselves to some of those temptations, and we have to deal with the consequences. That's the law. That is the law. So understand that there will be time in which I will misuse my free will. Then I will have acquired a responsibility to deal with the consequences that I generate for myself. Not going to be in this incarnation. Hopefully, this incarnation I can get rid of it right away. If not, there is no time, or if there is no, if not ready for it, they're going to save it for next reincarnations when I'm ready to face and overcome the opportunity to make those corrections. Questions, comment?
I think there is an additional issue here, which is where we are living nowadays in the time of social media, right? That at the time of Kardec was just you could say something to someone or to a group, or you could write something. So the dissemination of what you said on what you wrote had very little wide effect. Nowadays, when we can post something on social media and it can go throughout the world very quickly and can do a lot of damage to others and to ourselves, we have to be even more careful. And to write something or to post a picture or something in social media, we have an additional time to reflect on it. Because when you say something, sometimes you say something immediately regret, right? It's something that comes out of impulse. So it's more difficult to control. But when you're writing something on social media, or you're posting a photo, or you're forwarding something that you received from someone else, you have time to think, you have time to reflect, and one should ask oneself, is this benefiting others? Is this helping others? Is this just a curiosity, funny thing? Is this going to harm people that do not agree with it? Is it going to come back to me in a way that it can cause my life to become more difficult? Because sometimes some things that we post or we say or we post can have a lasting effect on our lives, and it can make our lives much more difficult, much more challenging. Even if we regret and we try to repair, it's out there, it's written there. So you see a lot of this in politics nowadays, right? When a politician says something today and they go back to find a video of him saying or her saying the opposite 10 years ago or 5 years ago, and then they bring it, and politicians, they like to lie, and they are all much more likely to deny and to say they change opinion or they didn't mean. But again, it's in their profession to be able to get around these issues. We in our lives, we have to be very careful, and a lot of parents try to tell this to their children. Be careful what you post, because when you are interviewing for a job nowadays, they are going to search for you on Google, and they are going to see what are your political opinions and other type of opinions. And if there is something dangerous that you said or that you posted, it can come back to haunt you. It can prevent you to get something that you need, because again, there are issues out there, and there are sides to all discussions nowadays. So theoretically, when you are applying to a job, only your qualifications would count. But if you post something, that could harm others, or you are accusing others of something, or you are posting your personal opinions, it can be very dangerous. So I think this prayer here, it asks us to reflect. What are we doing with our life in relation to others? What are we showing of ourselves? And Elmo said very well, the example of the lake is very good. The fact that you think of something, and that thought, it's not a positive thought, you have to think a lot before saying, posting, because, you know, if it doesn't benefit anybody, why would you? If it can cause harm to others, you shouldn't. And if it can come back to harm you in any way, you should be very careful.
Yeah, one of the things that leads me to, unfortunately, that's the truth, dislike religions, especially most of the so-called Christians religion. And I say so-called because with my ignorance, I think they are not real Christians in its essence, is this thing of putting the teachings of Christ purely in a religious context. And what João is saying here, and I add that the teachings of Christ are guidelines for how to live our lives every single day. Is a guideline of how to exercise our free will while making decisions in our every single day in every aspect of our lives. And more than ever in this time of so much use and misuse of social media, of that again, at the time of Kardec, if our thoughts have to be placed in writing, and chances are not gonna go travel too far from where we are. Today we can put our thoughts online on social media, and it will spread throughout the 5 continents in a matter of seconds. It will spread like fire in a matter of seconds. And we're responsible for the consequences of those thoughts that we placed. Others are responsible to receive my thoughts and do whatever they want with them. They're responsible with that. But I already acquired the responsibility for putting those thoughts over there. And of course, for the good, for the bad. You know, I'm not going to stress only on the bad. Going back to Socrates, speak only if it's the truth, if it's good, and if it's useful. It's not one of the three, but all three. And that's hard. That requires good thinking. And I think it becomes more and more and more important to use this suggestion from Socrates in association with the teachings of Jesus before you put something online and they will spread throughout the 5 continents. And there's people who never seen a flushing toilet in their lives, and they have a cell phone and they can read our thoughts somewhere in this world. That is how it can be spread so quickly. And the application of the teachings of Christ becomes so important these days with so much division out there, and everyone seems to be moving so far to one side or another and neglecting the middle where the truth resides, that we believe very often they are doing the right thing when you post them, they're doing the right things, because we lost the middle, basically. We are too far to the right or too far to the left, moving in the opposite direction to the truth that does not reside the middle, but not in the middle at right between right and left. The middle in reality is the apex of the pyramid. If you imagine a triangle with 3 equal sides, the middle is the apex of the triangle. It's above. And the more we move to the right and left, the more we distance ourselves from that truth. So you see a lot of people writing all those things online, especially these days of so much separation, and they truly believe they are right. And we are responsible when you place things out there that deviates us from that middle point and makes people go even farther to the right or to the left. As an example, just the beginning of this Palestinian-Israeli issue, I worked with Israelis, and I worked with Muslims who had family in the Palestine or were from Palestine themselves. I had the opportunity to work with both sides, and I had the opportunity to hear their truth of both sides. And I had the opportunity to see how far can we deviate, but from the reality of facts, but not because they are not able to think for themselves, but because they allow themselves to be so heavily influenced by media. It becomes almost like, I can imagine this individual, so intelligent, so capable, such a brilliant mind, becomes such a little puppet of those influences. And there I see the lack of Jesus in our lives. Not the religious Jesus, but the religious, but the Jesus that thought individuals like Socrates, that thought individuals like Gandhi, they were not Christians, but their lives represented the true, real Christianity. How is important to teach Christianity with our actions, with our words when necessary, to try to bring those moving so far to the right and left a little bit more towards the center and be a little bit wiser on who they are listening to. It is amazing what Ron said is so true, how dangerous really social media can be, but how good it can be as well. I mean, you cannot only go the negative because it's a neutral tool that we have. But unfortunately, when we surrender as those kids, or surrender and not resist temptations of just become one single-minded individual and surrender our ability to think to someone else, becomes so extremely dangerous. And that's the reality that we are facing today. I can't imagine a time that we needed Jesus more and more in our lives. But again, not the religious Jesus on a cross, but that teachers that inspired Socrates, that teacher that inspired Gandhi, that inspired Mandela, that inspired so many that some call themselves Christians and some didn't. But they represented the strict teachings of Jesus.
And it's interesting, yeah, that it's important that you said, right? It's all this social media. It's neutral, right? The use we make of it is what makes it good or bad. And as we look to it in general, we live in a world of trials and expiations, or trials and atonements, which the characteristic of the world that evil prevails over goodness, right? And the characteristic of a world of regeneration that we are going into is when goodness prevails over evil. So people ask when we are going to get there. Well, just look at social media. When the amount of information there, goodness prevails over evil, or good information prevails over bad information, then we'll be in a world of regeneration, right? But most of what we find in social media today is still less useful things. There is a lot of useful things there, and there is a lot of advancements, and we have it because we can deal with it. That's the characteristic of society, right? We achieve what humanity can live with, right? That's why information is so prevails to nowadays that something happens in let's say Vietnam, and immediately you learn about it, right? And at the time of Kardec, something happened in Vietnam. It took 1 month or 2 months to arrive the news through ships. So when the news arrived, everything already has changed, whatever the source of the news come from. Nowadays, you have a bus that falls from a ravine in Africa, and 1 hour later you have already all the information, the number of dead and things like that. So why is that? Because we can deal with that. We are prepared to deal with that. Do we know how to deal with that? That's a different story. We need to learn how to deal with that, how to react to this news, and how to react what our thoughts make of the news we receive, right? That's the issue here. But they are there because we are ready for it. So social media is there because we're ready for it. How we deal with it, we need to learn. We need to educate ourselves. We need to educate those our children or those around us. Again, we see people forwarding a lot of things nowadays, right? Videos, jokes, and good things, bad things, and it doesn't require much. What Elmo just said, Socrates, right? And before we forward something, just think about it. And again, sometimes we receive something that is not very useful, and we reply to whoever sent to us, criticizing them. Should we be doing that? Let's think about that, because when you receive something that you have no interest, that you think is not useful, that you think it's offensive, just delete it. It's as simple as that. Just delete it and move on. It's not very difficult, but it requires some thought and requires some balance.
Any more comments? We have 90 minutes. Let's do at least one more. Thanksgiving for victory over temptation.
Introduction. Those who resist the temptation owe it to the help of good spirits, whose voice they have listened to. They should thank God and their guardian angel. Prayer. I give thanks for having permitted me to emerge victorious over the struggle I have sustained against evil. May this victory give me the strength to resist new temptations. And you, my guardian angel, I thank you for the assistance you have given me. May my submission to your counsels merit your protection the next time.
I think it's nice that you end with a good note here. That I think we beat ourselves so much in this reading, how we can be so negatively influenced by others. But the good news that you can be positively influenced by others as well. Again, it's all a matter of making a choice of, the old image, of the angel on one shoulder and the devil on the other shoulder, and they, both trying to convince or to take one step or another, and you have to make a choice. That we do make the choice of listen to the good side, to the good end, to the angel on one shoulder, and ignore the devil on the other also. And to that, I may be wrong, but I think it's a 0 tap on the back. And have no problem say, oh yeah, I got it right. Good for me. But with the humility to understand that there's a good chance that I was guided to make that choice, right? That without the angel on one shoulder fighting so hard on my behalf, against the evil on the other side, that I was able to overcome the temptation from the evil side. I do believe I deserve a tap on the back. I think each one of us should give ourselves a little tap on the back and, say something, good for you, man, you did it. But have the humility that there's a good chance that there was a good work on the invisible side that helped us to overcome that temptation and do not act on perhaps inferior thought that we generated or that come from an outside source. But regardless, we resist, we did not act on it, we did not acquire the responsibilities that we would acquire from that. And on the other hand, it provided me, I think it's very important, it provided me with the strength, with that little victory, to resist new temptations. It made me stronger. It's made me more powerful to continue that battle that we have within ourselves, right? To be able at the end of the day, follow again St. Augustine's suggestion when you do that recap, put all our actions and thoughts on a scale and see that the scale or the good sides is by far is heavier than the one of the bad sides. I think it's a tremendous accomplishment. We should be proud of ourselves for doing that. Should tap ourselves in the back for doing that, and recognize that without help, likely that squad would not be that good. And I think we can stop here. Any comments, questions?
Yesterday we had a very good lecture by Yuri Castro and the United States Spiritist Federation. It's the power of gratitude, right? It was basically based on the book Psychology of Gratitude by Joana de Angelis. If you missed, it's really worth the importance of exercising gratitude and working how to live with gratitude for the things we have and for the opportunities we have. It's available on the United States Spiritist Federation YouTube page or the International Spiritist Council YouTube page, and I think it builds on what we discussed here today. So I recommend, if you can, go there to watch it. Okay. Next Sunday we are going to study the Medium's book. Okay, we just started the second part of it, which is where we really started studying mediumship. So that's next Sunday. And if you haven't seen yet, the United States Spiritist Federation also released a new online course, Mediumship, that is available. You can enroll through the United States Spiritist Federation, and you can register and watch. The first module of 4 classes was released, and the second module of 4 more classes, I believe, is going to be released sometime this week, maybe tomorrow or some other day this week. Okay. Carol, can you do our final prayer?
Yes, certainly. Thank you very much, Elmo, for hosting. Thank you, John, and thank you everyone today for participating. Philip, we thank you for reading. Infinite Creator and Supreme Intelligence, we give thanks to be together again as brothers and sisters for our studies of the Gospel according to Spiritism, the chapter being chapter 28, to keep evil spirits away. We can actively repel negative and evil spirits by maintaining good vibrations and our intentions. May we clear and cleanse our spirit of impurities, negative thoughts, pride, jealousy, and hatred. May we actively resist the influences and triggers of bad spirits. May we have the willpower to humbly ask the good spirits to assist us. With faith and courage, we can do our part and pray for our faults to be corrected. Through our free will, we can do goodness and inspired actions of charity. Align with intelligence, balance, the moral laws, and the good spirits to resist negative and inferior tendencies. We have a choice. Again, we give thanks to the spiritual benefactors and the good spirits for guiding and inspiring us today. May we receive the love, light, and peace of Christ within us for our loved ones, our teachers, our directors, the counselors, the mediums, the workers, and all who are participating. May we pray now for inner peace, and especially for world peace and for those who are suffering in the physical and spiritual worlds. We pray for our center, SGNY, and all Spiritist centers throughout the world, that they may grow, prosper, expand, and be protected by day and by night. As we close, we humbly ask for safety and protection as we return to our family, friends, loved ones, and co-workers. And may we remind ourselves to go forth as beacons of love, of light, of peace, of service, and of charity, which is love in action. So be it.